Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Greene podcast. All right, jumping into that debate last night, that was wild. You know, there really wasn't anything that I didn't know going into that debate that I came out like, oh man. I knew Biden was old. He was 81 when he went in. He was 81 when he came out. Um, I'm not going to knock somebody for being old, of course, because growing old is a privilege that's denied to many. However, you don't need to be president. But when the dude on the other side is Donald Trump, I don't care. I'm still rocking with Joe. Donald Trump, what I learned from him coming out of there, he's still a liar. I didn't think he was going to lie about some of the stuff that he did. He actually said that he didn't make the comment that there were fine people on many sides in the situation in Charlottesville. He said it was debunked. Joe Biden made it up. Problem is, we heard it. The suckers and losers comment about the men and women in uniform who lost their lives. He said that was a lie, and Joe Biden made that up when General Kelly, who at the time was his chief of staff, who has come out publicly admitting it. He said it. He was standing right beside Trump when he said it, not to mention General Kelly had a son who was in that cemetery. We ought to know what Trump is about. We've already seen 4 years of a Trump presidency. There's nothing that Trump did the first time that he was in office that proved diversity. You can't say that you are for the African American. I love my African Americans. And then you bring in Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon and have them as advisors in your cabinet. You look at the presidents before him, that's when you see Condoleezza Rice as Secretary of State. You see Colin Powell, who also spent a time as our Secretary of State. And Condoleezza Rice was also National Security Advisor. So you're talking about individuals that were put in positions on previous Republican cabinets where their actions fit their arguments or their claims for diversity. You give Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom during a State of the Union address, where he received a standing ovation. Rush Limbaugh.
He is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh?
Yeah, with an A on the end. It's not racist.
Thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country.
Receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom?
How many of you guys, in your own experience with women, have learned that no means yes if you know how to spot it?
Al Sharpton goes out the front door. Yes, I spoke a little Negro dialect there. I can do that when I want to.
Yeah. That is who received the Presidential Medal of Freedom during the State of the Union address. I have to get to this point to where if you're talking about them, they, and us, and trying to separate us, we got to get rid of that. That's why we're in the shit that we're in. That's why we stay in the shit. So during election time, the right likes to, bring up things. The 1994 crime bill, it gets a lot of traction. And it gets a lot of traction when people try to use things that they were complicit in. They try to use things that they were very involved in it going sideways. But since we're in an election time, they try to manipulate the truth, which is no surprise. Let's talk about this 1994 crime bill. All right, the 1994 crime bill, which was written by Joe Biden, created a lot of issues in Black communities in the way that it was policed, which is no surprise. All right, so Biden wrote this crime bill. Also, the support that he got for the crime bill came from members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Originally, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, they criticized the bill, and they introduced an alternative bill that included investments and prevention and alternatives to incarceration, which voted $2 billion more to drug treatment and $3 billion more to early intervention programs. Right. The caucus also put forward the Racial Justice Act. That's what they wanted added into this. This would have made it possible to use statistical evidence of racial bias to challenge death sentences. All right, I'll say this again. The Congressional Black Caucus put forward the Racial Justice Act that they wanted included in this 1994 crime bill, which would have made it possible to use statistical evidence of racial bias to challenge death sentences. Black support for the crime legislation was highlighted. That's what everybody talked about. Hey, the Congressional Black Caucus, they like it. We got we got black mayors in cities that like it. Mayor Kurt Schmoke of Baltimore, he was one of the biggest proponents of it because of what he was dealing with in Baltimore. And black support for the anti-crime legislation was highlighted, while black criticism of specific legislation was tuned out. The caucus threatened to stall the bill, but lawmakers scrapped the Racial Justice Act when Republicans promised to filibuster any legislation that adopted its measures. In the final negotiations, Democratic leadership yielded to Republicans demanding that prevention, or as they said it, welfare for criminals, they call prevention welfare for criminals, be sliced in exchange for their votes. All right. Senator Robert Dole insisted that the focus be on cutting pork, not on cutting prisons or police. The compromise eliminated $2.5 billion in social spending and only $800 million in prison expenditures. Ultimately, 26 of the 38 voting members supported the legislation. 26 of the 38 voting members of the Congressional Black Caucus supported it. Yep, Joe Biden wrote it, but shit. Okay. This prevented black lawmakers with a dilemma. Defeating the bill might pave the way for something even more draconian down the line. As Representative Robert Scott of Virginia explained, Bobby Scott explained, that he didn't like the bill. He didn't like the way it was set up. He thought that it was targeting a certain group of people who would be affected. And he was right. The bill allocated federal funds for up to 75% of the cost of new prisons, defined 60 new capital offenses, constricted inmates' access to higher education, and introduced 100,000 more police officers. Less than a quarter of the funding went to prevention programs. Over 20 years later, this legislation continues to shape the lives of African Americans. The crime bill was bad. In a recent interview, you have James Clyburn, who's currently still in House leadership. He said crack cocaine, this is a quote from him, crack cocaine was a scourge in the black community, right? They wanted it out of those communities and they had gotten very tough on drugs. That's why yours truly and other members of the Congressional Black Caucus voted for that 1994 crime bill. So that's kind of the deal behind the 1994 crime bill. There's a lot of people that wish that they wouldn't have done it because of how it was policed. But when it comes to all of the other stuff that everybody keeps fighting about, look, everybody's tired of gas prices, food prices, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, okay? Everybody's tired. There's no Republican grocery store that you go to and there's a different price. Everybody's tired. But what kind of gets me on that aspect of it is, why do career politicians in the House and the Senate, why do they get a pass? they've done nothing but hold hearings on Hunter Biden and his laptop, hearing on the January 6th committee that was investigating what happened on January 6th. It's like it never stops. And everybody seems to be okay with that because you don't hear shit. All we hear is Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. Republicans have the majority. What are y'all doing? They can call in Mark Zuckerberg and they can literally wear him out because of what millions of people that he don't even know because of what they're putting on social media. But they don't bother Exxon. Exxon, you got however many billions of dollars of government subsidies. You got billions of dollars of taxpayer funds, and you made record profits. Nobody questions that because they're getting money. Ted Cruz is up for re-election. You know, if we're gonna keep sending dudes like that back to DC, you know, what do we think is gonna happen? 51%, I think it was over half of all sitting politicians in the House and the Senate are millionaires. They vote in the interest of the companies and the corporations. But they don't get anything. We let them just go and do whatever the hell they're going to do. But anyway, again, follow us here on the Greene Podcast. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the little bell. Make sure you catch all the alerts so you don't miss anything. And also follow us on Facebook. We did this to ourselves. It is what it is. You know, so we need to stop acting like some aliens just flew over and just pushed out Biden and Trump, and we don't know how they got here. We know how they got here. We did that. So now we'll sit back and we'll deal with this circus.